Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Iron and today I am working on our week 3 meta overview of Blight League 3.8, and I took a break from working on the stats and some of the overview stuff because this has been an ongoing and upcoming kind of boiling point, discussion point about POE optimization, and I feel like over the last 24 hours to 48 hours, it's come to a bit of a head as a discussion on optimization of Path of Exile as an experience. And this is, of course, a beautiful graphic that was put together by Erneslav on Reddit that said, next league that we all want is the Path of Exile Optimization League. I like what they've done here. Kudos to each of you out there in the comments. If you can identify each of the letters and the appropriate leagues for them, that he's smashed this together. I think it's pretty cool as a graphic, but I simply don't think it's going to happen. I've written my response onto this particular thread, and we'll get to what my opinion is, but before we do that, I wanted to get to this discussion piece by Redditine150, because this was a really well thought out discussion piece, and these are the sorts of things that are compelling to me as a player, these sorts of discussion pieces. As a disclaimer, I don't always agree with all of the stuff that I'm reading and interacting with, so don't think that simply because we're talking about it and featuring it here on our YouTube channel that this is something that I 100% agree with. Rather, realize that this is a discussion that we're all kind of having as a community, or as a mini community, or as a segment of the Path of Exile playing community. And I want to bring it to your attention so that way you can participate in the discussion. And I also think that it's worthwhile for us to discuss and have different viewpoints on. So just because I don't agree or I do agree with something doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't chat about it. So that being said, let's jump right in to what this particular user says. He titles his post, Blight 3.8.1, Recent Changes, Heavy Pipelining to Future X-Packs, short for expansions, Statements from the Game Developers Conference, and the Future of POE with Diablo 4 competition. Oh no, I said the forbidden game, the forbidden name. After 3.8.1 was rolled out, I was trading a summoner with a full-on zoo that lagged the crap out of me in my hideout. It was server-side. The Necro had the same stutters since the patch. It kind of struck a nerve in combination with other concerns, and I wanted to air some of this out and see what other people think. TLDR, what do you think about the small league effort such as Blight plus its issues? And do you think Blight is okay if that means we get a bigger expansion next, or 2 leagues over, or not? You'll see where I stand. I'm curious where you all stand on this. So after 3.8.1, I'm still crashing in Blight maps, and on certain tile sets, the stutters are still really bad. I've controlled and lost many maps so many times in Blight. I don't know what you've done, but my textures are loading all funny and slow since 3.8 as well. As for the rewards, they were simply doubled instead of fixed. I'm making this post because I know it'll be yet another week before we see any real fixes after we cry some more, and frankly, I'm getting annoyed a bit with the last year of POE. Blight in general is a really small league, and that's fine with me. My issue is with the worsening quality on the technical level. It's becoming a burden. There is this insanely short cycle of 3 months that through trial and error is bringing you success now. Mostly due to pipelining bigger expansions, which is more and more the case. That's amazing. You need to bring in those new players. But please find a way to make the off leagues better and more playable. Less pipelining and more testing fixing before and after it's released. Or at least jump on it faster when content is borderline unplayable. You didn't design or create much of anything for Blight, so much that you plugged the synthesis bosses in as an easy job to try and make Blight more whole. This is one area where I disagree with the poster. You can't say, oh, they didn't do anything with Blight, and you can't even say that Blight is necessarily a small league in comparison with other league, when we've all seen the amount of patches and the amount of data that is transferred over patches grow more and more with each league, and we've seen the patch notes grow with each league. So I don't want to spread false information out there. So I get where this poster is coming from, but I don't want to spread false information. You and I can't say how long or how much it took for them to figure out how to design and implement and make Blight League. So let's not just say that this is a small league simply because GGG has said it's a less ambitious league or there will be less ambitious leagues in the future. Yeah, sure, maybe it's less ambitious than 3.5, which took a year to build up to. They haven't taken a year to build up to Blight. But let's not undersell GGG and the people working there for what they've done. Blight has taken a lot of effort to get out. So let's just clear that up right away. Okay, let me emphasize in the strongest possible terms that I don't care that you do this. I'll play POE whenever, anytime. But if you are going to make a half-baked league to pipeline a bigger expansion, at least make it good and stable. Kind of wondering how Delve was completely broken for everybody for the first couple of days of Blight as well. The point being, it's such a small league that still has so many problems. No oils from Blight maps, somewhat bad rewards, no chase content, blighted maps are too rare, and my own personal biggest issue, yet again no proper tooltip information on league mechanics. Then the core part of the league is massively unstable and crashing for lots of players. Again, I'd like to clarify this. He says the point being it's a small league. We've already chatted about that. That still has so many problems. Yes, almost every league has got its own little problems. But he says there's no oils from Blight maps. That's not a problem. Let's just make sure that this is out there. That may be something you disagree with as a player, but it's not a bug. It's not as though GGG said, oh, it was intended that oils would drop from Blight maps, and we just haven't been able to figure out how that works. That's not a problem. That is a design choice that you disagree with. Don't say it's a problem with the league that they failed to implement. That's a design choice that they've simply chosen not to do. They say somewhat bad rewards and no chase content. Blighted maps are too rare. This sentence is a perfect example of putting together things that are just self-contradictory. Somewhat bad rewards, no chase content, and blighted maps are too rare. So it sounds like blighted maps are supposed to be the chase content, along with oils that take a long time to get. A true chase content piece of content that's taking people a very long time to get and to acquire. Maybe, even more rare than on the levels of a headhunter. Oh my goodness. So if something is rarer and tougher to get than a headhunter, and headhunter is a chase item, that means it's a chase item, right? So I just want to say this whole sentence is kind of like, hey, you're complaining about these things, that's fine. If you disagree with these things as design choices, as opposed to saying they're problems with the league from implementation. GGG's got the ability to do these things. They're simply choosing not to do it. That's a design choice complaint, not a complaint about optimization. Just want to make sure we clarify that. If it's like you ship a league regardless of its state nowadays, having already planned out to do some fixes for stuff you knew was broken, but with yet too little dev work hours so that they come out 2 weeks later. Increasingly so, this is the case. With only 4 updates to your game a year, I feel like it has been getting better, not worse. I think this is true. I think things are getting better and not worse. I can point to an example that this poster points to, which is Delve. Delve on release had several different issues that were simply broken. We just now, this league, during 3.8 Blight League, got the ability to actually have our Delve fossils and Delve items stack in a Delve stash. It took them a year to do that. Now, a lot of you would say, well, why didn't they have that optimized to sell alongside Delve? And at the same time, for many of us, if they would have had the stash tab optimized and ready to sell with Delve, we would have said, hey, this is just a cash money grab. This is GGG now selling stash tabs in conjunction with leagues, and what a money grab that is. Like, that's pay to win. You're specifically selling a tab for a specific league mechanic. That's pushing it a little bit, right? So they're in a can't win situation. Either they release it either they release a league alongside like paid optimization that we've all asked for and all been willing to pay for with our stash tabs, and we call GGG greedy. Or they don't release it because they haven't figured it out yet, because again, leagues are really the beta environment for these particular core mechanics, and not every league goes core. See Bestiary on release, see Synthesis presently. Not everything goes core right away. So to think, oh, everything is going to be fixed on day one is ridiculous. And the fact that things are getting fixed 2 to 3 weeks in a league is a massive improvement to where we've been at over the last several years. If you can remember Essence League, if you can remember Abyss League, if you can remember Harbinger League, if you can even remember the Time-Worn Reliquary keys and the Time-Worn stuff from Legacy League, like there were all kinds of bugs that didn't necessarily get fixed until 4 to 6 weeks into the league. And now stuff is getting taken care of 2 to 3 weeks into the league. That's fantastic. That's cutting down the turnaround time to fix these issues in half. So while I am sympathetic, yes, there are lots of issues, to say that it's getting better and not worse is an understatement. They're really, really turning things around in terms of their optimization during the league. Recent leagues and issues. I couldn't progress Delve for 2 weeks. The Nico starting quest bug, which stopped many players from delving completely, and the cart interaction massacre that was improperly patched, and then reoccurred in Synthesis as well for a whole week. And then in Synthesis, boss styles that spawned unreachable, that was finally patched 2.5 weeks later without a retroactive fix. And now this patch, which has huge instability and lack of depth. It's getting worse every league because of your obsession with new content and new players. This league is yet another big step up in terms of instability from the last couple. Betrayal had massive lasting FPS and stuttering problems for weeks. I'm going to mention this in my own response, so we'll get more to this Betrayal stuff in a minute. Even months. I did not have any of these on my SSD machine, but I care only about how slowly they were tackled. People were massively affected in every map. Months and months of posts about the building tediousness of PoE's content. We keep getting half-baked solutions that rely on tediousness, putting maps in your masters. It's just like how on standard they add one half solution every 2 leagues, and you still can't properly use stash tabs there. Then there was the duplicate MTX shuffle that was pulled instantly the other week. The point is PoE is shifting considerably. GDC quotes and game balance versus money. The second main reason I wanted to post this is because I watched Chris's talk at GDC, and even though I was expecting a purely commercial point of view, I have some things to share about that which are directly related to my personal concerns with PoE. I'm curious what others think as well. It was kind of eye-opening as a true and loyal fan of this game and supporter. The talk was brutally honest about their business model, failures, and learning points for GGG and their growth over the years. Particularly the, quote, why would we spend 20% dev resources on something that affects 10% of players attitude lately, quoted from the talk. That's rather apparent. I care about the statement a lot. It's too tailored to acquiring new players, and the game is stacking up lasting issues and lack of quality of life to prove it. First edit. I completely forgot to add a point, which is the lack of balance because of money. Chris literally said in his talk that bringing players back is hugely amplified by rebalanced, renewed skills and archetype reworks. This makes a lot of sense. But then you think about balance and where it ties in. At this point, you have to be okay with a huge lack of balance going forward because clearly this model is very good for business. Make stuff OP, release your best MTX for it. Balance, for me, is officially off the table for the future of PoE. It's about freshness and money, more powerful builds, players, items, and item affixes make them more money. Also said in the talk. This is something that we're going to see tomorrow, and that I've been just poring over the numbers on the week 3 meta-analysis. You're going to see this in the meta-analysis. It's pretty much they create an archetype that they work on behind the scenes, and that archetype or something close to that archetype becomes the meta for that league. That being said, some of that might be because, not necessarily because of GGG's balance team, there's plenty of stuff out there that can tackle all sorts of content in Path of Exile. A lot of this actually has to do with the promotion of Path of Exile and what players and content creators choose to play. We all joke about the Mathel effect. If you're not familiar with the Mathel effect, you can simply Google the Mathel effect. We all joke about the Mathel effect on PoE's economy, that he'll choose a build, and because he's got tons and tons of viewers on Twitch and on YouTube, he changes the values of particular uniques and particular rare stats, and even the percentages of particular ascendancies that get played. Right? If one player, one content creator has that kind of sway on player decisions in the economy that has nothing to do with balances or changes or updates or patch notes, because oftentimes Matho will play something that's off meta, and then he releases a video or releases a stream where he shows off what he's doing, and then all of a sudden people shift, the economy shifts, players want different things. If one player can affect that, yes, of course, patching and changes to ascendancies can also change that. GGG also has a role in that in player balance. But content creators also do this. So we can't discount this and place all of the blame on GGG and say, oh well, GGG they come out with these powerful builds and they sell MTX related to powerful builds, and therefore boo on GGG because they're changing things and they want to go for a more fresh take, a more rotationary flavor of the month style of balance rather than true balance where everything is roughly equal or as close to equal as possible in terms of power. Like, that hasn't been here since Ascendancies got released. For those of you that are new to PoE, this was a debate when Ascendancies came out as a feature in Path of Exile. This debate that is now happening years later about balance and about preference and about pigeonholing classes and skills to particular Ascendancies, that was a debate that was had literally years ago in our rear view mirror. Okay, and it's coming to a head now, presently, because now we're talking about the way how you can balance around ascendancies and around archetypes and around metas. GGG's been incredibly transparent about all of this. They've said, hey, this is how we develop using archetypes, this is how we balance things, this is how we test things. And of course, players see that, and of course, content creators see that, and they see, hey, here's something that I used to play when I played PoE, maybe before I was a content creator or while I was getting a start as a content creator, or maybe a long time ago with a particular different build, and now I want to retry that old skill or that old ascendancy with these new nice and shiny tools. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad or that it's good or that it's anything stronger than anything else. I can still tell you, even though Essence Drain and Contagion and Cyclone all got a nerf since Legion, you can still kill Shaper, Uber Elder, clear the entire Atlas, except for maybe a map here or there. I'm thinking Hall of Grandmasters, etc. And you can still delve deep. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the stats here during Blight League, and there are people doing those exact things with skills that are no longer meta that recently received a nerf, with ascendancies that recently received the nerf. Arc is another great example of this. Arc was meta for an entire year. There's that wonderful what's his name? Enki, the Enki Arc Witch. It's a beautifully written guide. So many new players have started in Path of Exile and have started with Enki's Arc Witch. And guess what? Arc got the nerf hammer because it was meta for so long. And guess what? You can still use Arc to clear the entire game. Okay? So people saying, oh, balance. Yes, Arc is not as good as other options, or it's not as good as it used to be. Nonetheless, you can still complete the entire game on it on a relatively cheap budget, especially right now, because like anything that's going to scale up for self-casting spells is going to be incredibly cheap because so many players are playing other builds or things that are not self-cast. So all of this is just to say, if GGG is going to use a freshness and flavor of the month style of balancing, so what? They've been doing this for years, and the original poster here for this discussion, again, I appreciate that he's bringing all these things up because it gives us a wonderful discussion to have, but the original poster here seems to have forgotten this is a long discussion, or maybe they weren't around for this discussion. This is a long discussion that's been going on for a long time in PoE, and on top of that, he predicated everything at the top of the post by saying, I'm going to play PoE whenever I get the chance anyway. So if you're going to say, hey, I want all these things to fix and to change, and I'm frustrated with the game, but by the way, I'm going to play it at the drop of a hat anyway, like, where's the tension here? If you're going to continue to play the game and continue to support the game, this is where some folks, I think they're more intellectually honest, not necessarily more praiseworthy, but more intellectually honest when they say, you know what, I'm done supporting for a while, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to come back and see the game in a few leagues because I don't like the direction that it's going. If you don't like the direction of where a game that's publicly funded and publicly supported in the way that GGG does it with the free-to-play model, with MTXs and with supporter packs, then just don't support. I say this almost every single hype video when it gets announced that there's supporter packs. If you don't like, or if you're unsure of what the gameplay is like, or if you're unsure of the thing that they're promoting is something you'll enjoy, don't spend your money on it. You spending your money on something that's being promoted communicates that they're doing a great job with the marketing. It doesn't necessarily tell them that their development is actually doing anything. So until players learn, until we as consumers, as community members learn that we need to put our money where we want the development to be at, you can literally go and look at metrics. For anybody that's ever had access to any kind of cash flow in their company, or at least see how cash flow works in a business, you can literally look and see, hey, when are people paying us? And for free to play games, this is especially true. You can literally look and see, hey, we announced a new league and we announced the trailer for that new league, and wow, look at this, our supporter packs went up and our purchases of MTX went up and the expenditure of in-game points went up because people had odd numbers of points points and they're going to get a supporter pack, and so they've got new points. You can literally look and see how that graph goes up. And then you can also look and you can also see, hey, at the release of the new content, we had a big bump as well. But then as players experience the content, it actually goes down. Our expenditures in-game goes down. You can see that people don't necessarily pay for content nowadays in today's gaming society. This is something for all of us as gamers. It's not just localized to PoE. But that we as a gaming community oftentimes don't spend our money on content. We spend our money on marketing. And this goes all the way back, and it doesn't start. Its genesis isn't Grand Theft Auto 5, but I'm going to use Grand Theft Auto 5 as an example. With GTA 5, they spent over, Rockstar Games spent over $1 million, okay? $1 million on several different ads, and the total budget, I believe, for Rockstar, and I'm going to put this down in the video description so that way we can all check and see the actual figures. They spent as much money on the total collection of those several $1 million ad placements on the marketing budget for Grand Theft Auto 5 as they did for the development. And it was the first time in video gaming history that a particular game's marketing budget actually met and then eventually exceeded its development and production budget. I believe that was the first time it was Rockstar Games with Grand Theft Auto 5. And that particular change, that particular swap in style was a massive signaler to how we as consumers in the gaming community are interacting with games. So I'm sorry for the long rant on the money stuff, but I've just got to make the point clear. If you want game businesses to change the way how they're spending and developing their games with our money, then you need to change how you're spending it. If you like Blight League, you should purchase a supporter pack after Blight League is released, not after it's announced. Because what you're communicating is they did a good job with the marketing, not necessarily with the gameplay development. This is one of the reasons why we don't have a PoE optimization league. Because if they released this photo on the PoE GGG website and said this is going to be 3.9, it's going to be an optimization league, they're not going to see a bunch of supporter packs sold. They're not going to see a bunch of new players excited. They just won't. They just won't. The stats won't be there to back it up. It'll be a net loss for the company in comparison with what new content could be. Not a net loss overall. They might still make money. But in comparison with what new content could be, it would be a serious, significant loss. So you're never going to see this. So I appreciate that this poster has brought up the GDC quotes and the game balance stuff, because it really is needed to be discussed how we as consumers actually have power in this scenario with a free-to-play game. Okay, continuing on to the closing thoughts on the Diablo 4 competition discussion. I can't wait for D4 announcements, says the original poster. Some competition will be good for PoE. Blizzard has some serious catching and making up to do, so you know they are going to give it everything. Yeah, like giving it everything, like maybe making it on PC for first off. They certainly need to do it for it to be a huge money-wise. But hey, until then, looks like we'll be pumping insane amounts of dev time into 4.0, which will get a release date when D4 gets one. So 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, and 3.12, and maybe more, might be equally boring, because 4.0 is going to be possibly forever the most important patch in PoE history, with the power of D4 looming over its head. If 4.0 isn't a huge hit, we can at least jump over to Diablo 4. Closing thoughts. I'm just saying that I hope Blight League isn't a sign of the next 4 patches to come. Most streamers are already playing other games again. I'm not sure where he's getting that. I'm like, there's zero stats there. There's zero stats. Like, show me some stream stats. Show me some Twitch stream stats, which, by the way, are available. You can use Stream Spy. There's several other different ways in which you can gauge interactions, as well as views, as well as hours spent on Twitch, as well as right here on YouTube. So if you're going to make a statement like that, please, please, please back it up. I appreciate that this poster has quoted and has cited his quotes previously, but please, please, please back that up. If you're going to make that statement, please back it up. Hardcore is at an all-time low because of stability and randomness that doesn't get addressed. Hey, I'm still playing hardcore. I know that's not everybody. This is not a, hey, hardcore, I'm one player in hardcore and I'm representative of hundreds of thousands of players. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying, hey, I'm one guy out here who is still playing hardcore. And for us in Guild, we actually had the most amount of hardcore players this league ever. We also had a bunch of people quit hardcore, not because of optimization, but because of their play. Simply because they didn't like the style and the feel of having to constantly create new characters because they died. That's fine. That's not about optimization. That's about hardcore in its fundamental mentality. So again, show some numbers. Back yourself up. Show your homework with numbers. Yeah, I get it. They need to work on bigger patches and expansions for us. But even during the talk, Chris went over such brutally honest learning points for GGG that I feel like if nobody mentions that we care about these off leagues, it's not going to see any change, like many other things didn't in the past. Somewhere along the line, we've forgotten that PoE has a huge competitive laddering angle that needs stability. Huge competitive laddering angle? Like, GGG is not an esport. They're not an esport company. PoE is not an esport. Yes, there have been some competitive races for tickets to ExileCon. Okay, fantastic. That doesn't mean it is a huge competitive laddering angle that needs stability. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The guys that are all racing to 100, guess what? They're still racing to 100 every single league. Regardless of the league, regardless of the league scale. There's still racers who are racing to 100. Not because it's a huge competitive laddering angle, but rather because the dedicated players who want to race for that are going to race for that. I would actually say it's a growing laddering angle, but it's not huge by any means. On Hardcore Blight, I think there's only like 3 or 4 players that have hit level 100. Like, it... Again, substantiate what it is that you're saying. I feel what you're saying, but it's not necessarily substantiated by the numbers. Yes, there is a growing aspect of the competitive ladder angle, and Delve actually added to that, because Delve laddering is way different than the rush for 100, right? Because the rush for 100 is like, hey, the first week to 2 weeks of competitive rushing and racing, whereas pushing Delve numbers, that's new every single league. And every single league, the further you get into the league, the more money, the more currency, the more equipment, and the deeper you can push. So we've got an early game race, and we've got a late league race with both the rush to 100 and the rush to Delve. So it's quite interesting, but again, I don't think it's huge. Taking time off, making the time to race, or be among the first, only to be held back for 1 to 2 weeks with game-breaking issues, league after league, is taking its toll for me. That's fair. I'm unaware if you're a racer. Feel free to shout out and correct me if you're a racer. There's still a bunch of people racing, and in fact, there's a couple of different esports organizations that are now interested that have even picked up some different PoE streamers because they've got great promotion and because they've got great viewers for their racing and for their content. So you might say it's taking its toll, but it's growing at a rate that is great. That is fantastic. So if anyone read all of this and you don't agree with anything, that's fair. Consider it me posting my 2 cents. So are we not complaining enough? Does GGG think that most of us think that these small or tiny leagues and fixed timetables and the tediousness is okay, or am I in the minority? Okay, so this is what I wrote on this particular post. I'm just going to quote it here, and then I'd love your reactions and your comments. So this is my response. I've said it before, and I'll say it again at the risk of downvotes into the oblivion. I've had that happen before. We aren't getting an optimization patch. It's not going to happen, okay? Due to the hype plus the money that is made from new content. We get optimizations with every single patch, but no patch is going to sell itself by marketing its prime draw as Optimization League. It's a public relations disaster, as the message that goes out to casual or even potential new players is that the game needs to be optimized in order to be playable. Imagine that. Imagine if you're a new player and you've never played Path of Exile. Imagine another game that your friends tell you about. Imagine if it's a new game, it's called Dungeon Grinders, and you go in and it's an action RPG and you grind for loot and you have unique character classes that you can optimize and min-max. But the reason why you really should get into Dungeon Grinders this upcoming couple of months and patches is because they're optimizing the game so it's finally playable. If your friend says that to you on Discord, on Reddit, on Snapchat, on Facebook, God forbid you're having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, if your buddy actually says that to you, you're going to go, isn't that a terrible game? Like, if it needs a whole patch just to be optimized to be playable, that's a dead game. It's an unplayable game, right? So it's a PR disaster if you announce that you're having an optimization league. We didn't get an optimization league post Betrayal 3.5, which was a nightmare and caused many people to write angry Reddit threads, forum threads, and some leave the game entirely. The development team, as stated by Grinding Gear Games, is usually about 6 months behind on live complaints because it takes that amount of time to listen, evaluate, strategize, and then implement ideas to that particular complaint from 6 months ago. In other words, we haven't gotten an optimization league in response to problems from more than 6 months ago, like Synthesis being the league directly after Betrayal complaints, so there wouldn't have been enough turnaround time to fix those. But then we didn't get an optimization league during Legion, which would have been enough time to at least begin to plan an optimization league around. And then we didn't get an optimization league this league with Blight. So according to their development schedules and their timetables, we should have gotten an optimization league, either Legion or Blight, in response to Betrayal if it's a 6-month turnaround time from between the time when they read an angry Reddit thread to when they can actually fix it. That doesn't mean that Grinding Gear Games isn't committed to optimization. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. They are providing new content on top of various optimization fixes that help with typically 80 to 90% of user problems. Because the last 20 to 10% of problems aren't financially viable to fix in a manner that is beneficial to the company or frankly to users, as at that point too many variables can change to make a fix really more than just a band-aid rather than a true fix. So my final words on this, we aren't getting an optimization league, people, and I will gladly eat a hat, as it were, the proverbial eat a hat, if we get an optimization league in between now and 4.0. I don't think it's going to happen for all of these reasons and for all of the reasons that we've mentioned here in the video. And I think that's okay. In 3.9, we'll get a ton of optimizations of present and past bugs, and we'll also get new content to tackle in the same spectacular fashion as we do every 3 months. So, with all that being said, I think cheer up, folks, because I think GGG has shown us that they're committed to fixing the majority of problems, even if, yes, there are still annoying things that are there lingering on in the background. Many of you have commented on our Spectres video, on our Summoners videos, on our various hype videos, about various quality of life things that I've screwed up in mentioning. I've mentioned in the past it's annoying when you log out and you re-log back in and you have to summon your Spectres. That was a quality of life fix that happened over the last year. I've mentioned in the past about how you have to go to different zones and then hopefully spawn different Spectres in order to get them to spawn. Well, now another quality of life fix that's available in 3.8 is that if you had the Spectres when you entered the zone and they die, you can cast Desecrate, and those Spectres that entered the zone with you will now be available for you later. Like, that's something from years ago that literally people in the Summoner community, a niche community of Path of Exile, a niche within a niche, have complained about for years. And we finally got an update for it, right? So don't worry about it. Cheer up. We're getting optimization every single league, and that's okay because we also get new content to tackle every single league. But those are my thoughts. I think this is a good discussion point and just a good discussion for us today as we're talking about optimization and POE problems. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I hope that you're actually enjoying Blight League and that today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you in 3.8 Blight League.